Okay, so let's continue with the following variation if black plays e6. So we saw a6, we saw knight f6 things. How about if just e6 and if castle, then a6? Very solid pawn moves, but those are controlling the squares well enough from especially from the white knights. How about if he would play knight g7? Because yeah, the point is also that if the knight would come to f6, knight comes to f6, that is another variation. I can play queen e2 and rook d1 with a similar plan. We will have this variation also. So let's go to the knight g7 when his knight also would like to go towards g6. And right now we play bishop g5. Now we pin the knight, and the point is that, yeah, because sometimes we go to f4, sometimes g5 with the bishop. Bishop f4 is also possible, but now knight g6 will be a tempo, so somehow bishop g5 is more natural. And for example, if he would attack with h6, at this moment, this is already a decisive mistake. But why? Because white can play the awesome knight b5 exclamation mark, and suddenly he has a big problems on d6. Compared to this position, if we would play knight b5 now with knight g6, he can just protect with the bishop as well. And that's why here we pinned, and h6 knight b5, now he can't move with the knight, so he has a big problems on d6. For example, if he would play d5, then we have two good moves. I think e takes d5 is also fine, but bishop f4 is the strongest. Because now in this diagonal is very strong with the bishop. If knight g6, then knight c7. And d takes c4 obviously also not good, because knight c7 and he has to sacrifice his queen. Alright, so he should forget the h6 completely. a6 also, because knight b5 is not working now. And now white can continue with his typical developing plan, like queen e2, h6, bishop e3, just come back here, knight g6, and knight d4. Rook fd1 is also an option and a typical move. This we also play usually, but now e5 is not a really strong threat, so that's why white tried to play a bit faster play. Knight ge5. Yeah, the idea is that if he would take, bishop takes, and the development is not easy for black, because this pawn is under pressure, so bishop e7 is not possible. And also if he would play bishop e7, natural developing move, then another idea of behind knight d4 is that we can come with the quick f4, f5. So for example, castle, and maybe f5 in a good moment. Maybe not now, because the knight g5 he has, but if I just go, for example, rook a d1, here we also have a very, very good pressure for the pawn, as usual. So let's see knight ge5. How about knight ge5? Bishop b3 and g5. This is a strange move at first sight, but he wants to avoid the f4. So for example, bishop e7 could have been met by f4, and his knight has to leave. And generally I also want to play this plan, moreover do it for a tempo. Yeah, it seems to be really good. Okay. So that's why g5, but also didn't avoid, okay, he avoided that we chase away the knight from the center, but of course we also come with f4, and if he takes, we just open up the f-file, maybe knight takes c6, take back, and something like rook takes f4, and we have a great pressure for the pawn. Same story like before, black is completely undeveloped. Look at these pieces. Only the knight is active on e5. We can feel that for one pawn, this is not enough for him. Even the short castle option is not so good for him, because come here and if castle, this h6 pawn will be weak. Maybe rook h4 also working. So yes, this is just hard for him. Okay, let's see how about a6. And okay, if you don't have any special continuation, like which is crushing him, we can play queen e2 and followed by the rook d1. Let's see what will be the black's play here. For example, bishop e7. Very solid little developing moves, because he doesn't want to hurry with the knight f6 as the quick rook d1 and e5 moves. Okay, bishop e7, we also continue with rook d1, and let's see how about if he would come out of the pin immediately with queen a5. Then we go bishop f4 and knight e5. Yeah, because we immediately attack the d6. He doesn't want to weaken his structure, because e5 is really weaken the d5 square forever. So anytime I can jump with any pieces. Of course not now, because my bishop is hanging, but this we can feel this is a big weakness for him. So knight e5. Knight e5 is more natural. Knight takes e5, d takes c5, because this pawn structure, however, he has double pawn, it's no problem, because controlling several squares there. Bishop d2, queen c7, because we had already some discovered threats. So for example, if he would play knight f6, we have a good knight jump to d5, queen is hanging, queen goes back to d8, only square of that, and we take the bishop. Why the bishop? Very important, because on the dark squares we can find kind of counterplay. So for example, can I play a3 here to prepare for bishop b4? Maybe I can, but probably he plays a5 after that, and if bishop b5 check, then bishop d7, and he just block. So maybe here we can find another plan for it, queen e1. Also the same idea, but much more deep, because there is no a5 now, as I can take it for free. So queen e1 is a very nice and deep continuation. And if I reach bishop b4, black can't castle, so white's position is obviously much more tempting. Okay, how about, for example, queen c7, if he immediately goes out of the threats, of the discovered threats? We play rook a c1. Now we have again threats there. So for example, if he also plays knight f6, we have knight b5. This motif already we saw previously, because the point is that if takes, then check and attack the queen. Or if the queen leaves somewhere, then we have also this very unpleasant check, and we will have the same motif completely, and white is winning. So that's why the queen has to escape. Queen d8, queen b8, I mean, and bishop b5 check. So we give a brilliant check here, but let's see what is the point of this sacrifice. The point is that if a takes b5, knight takes b5, bishop d7, knight c7 check. Because, yeah, how can he avoid the knight c7? He can't. king f8, knight takes a8, so we take that also, queen takes, and bishop b4, another great move. If bishop takes b4, rook takes d7. This was the general idea. Or if, for example, knight f6, we can play queen d2, bishop takes b4, queen takes b4, king g8. If the king would come towards the center, it's even more dangerous because my penetration is very strong. Materially, we are also almost not worse because 2 pieces for the rook, and look, his king in the middle. So white is winning here. Maybe push the pawn and slowly go forward and slowly crush his position. For example, if queen d8, if with queen d8 he protects that bishop, we have rook b7 followed by rook b8, and black is losing here. So that's why king g8, he tries to escape for that side. And now coming the great crushing move again, the rook takes d7. Let's see why this is so strong. Knight takes d7 and queen e7, important penetration. And knight f8 can't protect his king completely because we come with rook c7 and crushing him on f7. Or if the knight goes to f6, if rook c7, now he would like to play queen e8 or queen f8. But then rook d1 and rook d8 will come. So it's also hopeless for him. How about g6? If g6, then we just take the knight. And now we don't have already material down, so we can feel that white is clearly better. For example, king g7, and we have several continuation. Maybe the penetration is good. Rook f8 and come back with the queen here, hanging on e5, hanging on b7. So white is very good here. Okay, so this was the 9 queen a5. Probably it was a bit early to come back with the queen. But his problem is that if he would continue with knight f6, we can attack him with e5. So the typical Morra gambit is going on well here. Let's see how about queen c7. If queen c7, then bishop f4. We already know that this is the ideal square of the ideal diagonal square of the bishop. And okay, knight f6 now is possible, but it's transposing to the 7 knight f6 variation. So let's start with some different one. For example, knight e5, as in the previous line. But here we can also feel that we have something quick before he finished the development. Bishop takes e5, d takes e5. Now suddenly we give up the bishop. It's very rare, but if we would take with the knight, then d takes e5 would be a tempo, so that we don't really want. And because now we can play another developing move with which we continue the pressure. Rook a c1 and queen b8. Yes, because we also have this knight b5 thing. So knight f6 is losing with the same way at knight b5. Or if bishop d7, also knight b5 is a big problem for him simply. A takes b5, rook takes d7, queen takes d7, and bishop takes b5, and white is completely winning here. We won the queen. Yeah, this rook takes d7 is very smart idea, and doesn't really have other move than queen takes the rook. Okay, how about queen b8 if he goes out immediately from the c file? This is the typical, but now we will also play a very, very good continuation here. Let's see how can we do something right now. Bishop b5 check, exclamation mark, extremely good continuation. 8 takes b5 and knight takes b5, and white is winning here. It was actually a game because let's see why. Threatening with knight c7, but okay, we have a piece down right now. So for example, if he would avoid that with knight f6, and we play knight c7 check, the king goes to f8. Let's see how can we crush him. So take the rook, queen takes back, because still materially black is good, but I will come very quickly with this queen c4. And now he's in a big trouble, because bishop d7 is not working, as I can sacrifice my rook, because in the end I win back a lot of material. Even the bishop and the rook also. So finally, from the piece down, we will have a rook up. Okay, so this was the knight e5. That's why the knight e5 is not a really good continuation and too slow. How about pawn e5? Tempo, but okay, he played the e5 in twice, so that's not the best. And also, right now, even it's true, he weakened the d5 square. That's why I said now especially, because now the knight can jump immediately with the tempo instead of escaping with the bishop. Queen goes to b8 and the bishop goes back to e3, and from here we can go to b6 with this. Then knight c7 check. We can also feel that this is a great position. b5, bishop b3, bishop d8. He would like to save his bishop and the b6 square also, because for example if knight f6, then we would have knight b6, and if rook a7, then knight takes c8 is working. So this is winning, that's why bishop d8. But now also almost all pieces are on the back rank. Bishop g5, we continue the pressure, and now we offer the trade of the bishops, because if he would take, then we take back with the knight and another piece is coming to the attack. So for example, if h6, then we have already kind of sacrifice. King takes f7 and queen h5 check. Maybe king f8. And the brilliant knight f6 is decided the game, because we are threatening with two kind of checkmate, queen f7 and queen e8. And how can he avoid that? He can't. So white is winning. But okay, bishop g5 wasn't so logical, because the knight could come by tempo. So of course these nice tactical motifs are just, couldn't avoid with this. So rook a7. Knight f6 also doesn't really work, because maybe I can just take it. Bishop is taking back, and queen c2. Suddenly we attack his knight, and if he protects with bishop b7, we take the bishop, g takes, and also his position is so pushed. Maybe queen d2. Now the d6 is hanging. If he protects with king e7, then also several good continuations we have. Unfortunately, knight h5, knight f4, knight h4, knight f5 is not working, because knight d4 can come by tempo. But if we play simply rook a c1 or bishop d5, we can feel that white is good here. Okay, let's go back. And I think it is similar story with knight g7. Okay, now he won't have double pawns, but also we will somehow attack him. For example, a4, b4, and knight takes e7, bishop takes back, and maybe queen c4 is one of the strongest move, because attack the knight and attack the f7 also. So here we can also feel that we have a great play for the pawn again. Okay, knight d8 still he can play, but again all pieces go back to the back rank. Black can't castle, so not a really promising position for him. So how about rook a7? Yeah, it's actually a deep move, because the rook is coming to the 7th rank and try to make some defending ideas there. Rook ac1. And after rook ac1, white is better, because because we come with the last piece also. What can he do with the c6 knight? Yeah, not clear. Knight ge7, for example. But then we can also continue. Maybe bishop e7 also, but we can keep the tension with queen d2 also. And if he finally castles, then we will have kind of attack here. Knight takes e7, bishop takes... I know it's not working because this is hanging. He has to take with the knight. And finally I took the pawn. And not only win back the material is the point. The point is that his position is also pushed. So I win back the d6, but then the e5 is also hanging. He can't play f6 because it is pinned. So it's just much better here. Okay, let's go back. This was the queen c7. How about the bishop d7? Bishop d7 seems to be a good move, because he plays a developing move, and with that he neutralized the d-files pin. a3. Yes, probably this is the first time we saw this a3, because usually we come with different moves, but it is a multiple move. Sometimes later we can come with b4, which can be useful, but the main point is that in an important moment the bishop can come back to a2. So freeze the a2 square. So for example, if he comes with kind of knight a5, the bishop comes back very simply on a2, and he solved the bishop pair problem completely. So, okay, let's see how about knight f6. Continue development, and now we can also play the same plan, bishop f4, queen c7. Yeah, we already discussed the other things. Okay, knight e5 is not working because we attacked twice, and if he would play pawn e5, also the weakness of the d5 square. We have, for example, bishop g5, and white has a good pressure here for sure. So queen c7, rook ac1, castle, and queen d2. Yes, the another idea is that if we play bishop a2 and then prepare for kind of knight d5. Not sure now this is... it's possible, but it's so strong, because if, for example, rook ac8 and we jump to knight d5 and takes, he can just play rook fe8, d takes c6 and just take back, maybe with the bishop or with the pawn. And okay, white has something, but it wasn't so crushing play. But we don't have to forget this idea. Maybe even on e8 he can also go with the rook, and now knight d5 takes. There is something different. Maybe the queen can go to b6, and if d takes c6, then b takes back, and and protected the e7 already in advance. So probably this rook e8 is more accurate. Let's see how about queen d2, and with this we attack his d6 pawn immediately. Rook fd8. This will be the main continuation, but how about knight e5? Of course, we are happy to how to say, force him or provoke to play e5, because after e5, bishop g5 and even the knight d5 will be more stronger, because even we don't have to sacrifice the piece. For example, bishop e6 against that and knight d5, very dangerous. Even if he creates a bishop with bishop g4, it's also not so easy for him, because we can continue with queen d3, or queen e3 is also possible, and if he would jump with knight d4 to try to use out the pin, of course we take it, bishop takes d1, and a nice continuation to take back with this. And the point is that he can't take back the knight, because bishop takes f7 is winning the queen, and materially white is better here, because there are two pieces for the rook. So if we are materially is also okay, usually that is already a good position. So okay, e5 is not a really promising way. Let's see how about rook f d8. No, this will be the main. Let's start with knight e5 first. But now we will also have a great counterplay. Bishop takes e5. Again, we take with the bishop. D takes, because it is, compared to knight takes e5, okay, this is giving up the bishop pair, but it's an extra tempo. So there is a continuation with bishop takes a6 exclamation mark. Amazing sacrifice. But let's see what is the point of that. If he take it back, if he takes back, then we have knight d5, queen for example d8, we take on f6, and then take on d7, and materially equal, he has double pawns, it's clearly better for white already. Yeah, now we have already queen size majority, and which is a very important factor which we always have to keep in our eyes, is that the pawn endgame would be winning already. Because if you imagine that there are no pieces already, only the pawns, then with this double pawn he can't create a passed pawn, but we can with this very easily. So every exchange is good for us because the pawn endgame is winning. Okay, I know we are still far from that, but our pieces are even more active. b7 is also hanging weak, the rook is already penetrated to the 7th rank, so I think this is also a really promising position for white. Let's see how about if we would take with the pawn. If b takes a6, then we have knight d5 again. So actually we have kind of same motif, because for example if queen b7 is even worse because knight takes e7, king h8, but black hopes that the knight is trapped on e7, but then we can come with queen b4, queen takes b4, a takes b4, and bishop a4. The knight is not trapped at all, because for example if rook f8 I can come back to c6, and he can't control the c6 square with one more piece, because rook a8 is the knight is controlling that square. Also knight takes e4 is not working because the bishop is hanging here. So bishop a4, that's why he tried to play this active continuation. Rook e1, knight g8, knight takes g8, even he's better for him to exchange the knight. And knight takes e5, and finally we also reach that which is very rare in the Smith Morra. White is a pawn up. Rook f8. Okay, however, we have two ugly b pawns, but after knight d3 the chances are a little bit better for white, because still it's not easy to win back that pawn for black.